So 2020 was a year, and there were some films. And I want to talk about some of my favorite ones. Before I get into my top 10, I want to quickly list off some honorable mentions. These are some films that didn't quite make it onto my top 10, but I would still very much recommend them. We've got Mank, directed by David Fincher, Swallow, directed by Carla Marabella Davis, His House, directed by Remy Weeks, The Wolf of Snow Hollow, directed by Jim Cummings, The Invisible Man, directed by Lee Winnell, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, directed by Eliza Hittman, Relic, directed by Natalie Erica James, Borat, subsequent movie film, directed by Jason Woliner, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, directed by George C. Wolfe, Pieces of a Woman, directed by Cornel Mondruzzo, and Opal, created by Jack Stauber. And as far as series go, I want to shout out The Queen's Gambit, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, and The Midnight Gospel. Okay, let's get into my top 10 films of 2020. Number 10, The Assistant, directed by Kitty Green. I've already talked about this film in a previous video, and like I said, I really like this film, but I can totally understand why it wouldn't connect with some people who prefer a more traditional narrative. This movie's a very slow burn, it's very subtle, it's very immersive, and what can I say? It got me. It got me.
Oh, that got me good.
The Assistant is just a day in the life of someone who is trapped in a very toxic work environment. That's the movie. And in my opinion, they did a wonderful job portraying that in a profoundly realistic way. The subject matter is tackled with such honesty, and I want to make it clear that my reasons for liking this film do not hinge entirely on the fact that I agree with what it's trying to say. I find The Assistant to be very well made in every respect, especially in terms of atmosphere and restraint. This film's goal is to portray this particular situation exactly the way it goes down in real life most of the time. Every little nuance within this sequence of events is just handled so perfectly. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I first watched it. It's a good movie and I like it. Moving on. Number 9, Sound of Metal, directed by Darius Marder. Sound of Metal is about a drummer named Ruben who begins to lose his hearing after years of exposure to loud music. He's then taken in by a deaf community who attempt to help him cope with his newfound disability. Riz Ahmed's performance as Ruben is just so good. It's the best thing I've seen from him. Without a doubt, one of the best performances of the year. His portrayal of this character is so honest and complete. It's one of those things that you watch and you just go, I know this person. I have met people like this. This is a real guy. Paul Raci's performance is unbelievable. There's a scene between the two of them in this that if you don't roll a tear, you're a robot. And I hope they both get the recognition they deserve for their work in this film. Unreal. The sound design is really creative as the film periodically shifts into Ruben's perspective so the viewer can experience the decline of his hearing firsthand. You can tell that there was a tremendous amount of work put into the accuracy of how things sound to someone with this particular type of hearing loss that Ruben is experiencing. The representation of deaf culture in this film is handled with such care as well. The director wanted all of the deaf characters in this, aside from Riz Ahmed, to be played by people who were actually deaf or from the deaf community. For example, Paul Raci, who plays Joe, isn't deaf, but is part of the deaf community because he's the son of deaf parents. This story went in directions that I didn't really expect, because as much as it is about learning to cope with a newfound disability, it's just as much about being an addict and how that plays into how one might choose to cope with a situation like this. It's unique, powerful, and will just rip your heart out of your chest. Enjoy. Number 8. Every single film in Steve McQueen's Small Axe anthology. Small Axe is a film anthology created and directed by one of the greatest working directors, Steve McQueen, and each film in this series depicts a different story involving Britain's West Indian community in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Each film pieces together how West Indian culture has shaped British culture and depicts the hardships of immigrants, their children, and their children's children. There are 5 films in this anthology: Mangrove, Lovers Rock, Red, White, and Blue, Alec Weedle, and Education. They're all phenomenal, but if I had to pick a favorite, I can't, so I'll pick 2. My 2 favorites, I think, are Lovers Rock and Red, White, and Blue. Lovers Rock is about a house party in West London, and it's one of the most immersive experiences you will have watching a film. Its entire vibe is just really something else. You will be absolutely transported, I promise. Red, White, and Blue is based on the true story of Leroy Logan, a police officer who eventually founded the Black Police Association. The film takes place during his early days with the police force, in which he experienced immense hardship and prejudice at every turn. John Boyega's performance in this is phenomenal. I cannot tell you how happy I am to see him in a dramatic leading role like this, because he absolutely kills it. But like I said, every single film in this series is great in every respect, and you should totally watch all of them, because Steve McQueen does not play.
So this is what this was going to be my next question for you, Steve, is that you're depicting the struggle of those black communities 30, 40 years ago, to have a sense of belonging, to have a sense of, a stake in Britain, the development of black British culture, right, and society. Is it better? Sorry,
not only black British culture, period.
British culture, period.
We changed it. I mean, everything. We changed everything, even the way you dress.
Yes.
Everything. 3/4 went past. I mean, everything. The mods, rockers, everything. Let's not play.
Everything.
Oh, let's not play.
Number 7, The Vast of Night, directed by Andrew Patterson. Boy oh boy, was this the little movie that could this year. With a budget of only $700,000, this film manages to be more engaging and impactful than many others in its genre that have a lot more money at their disposal. This is a sci-fi film that is restrained, suspenseful, and just an absolute joy to watch. The premise is basically that 2 teenagers discover a mysterious signal coming through the electronics at their night jobs and choose to investigate where it might be coming from. Very simple premise, impressive camera work, solid writing, it has it all. Except for lots of money, which it didn't need anyway because it was made with skill and love. Number 6, Leap of Faith, directed by Alexander O. Philippe. This documentary is basically an hour and 40 minutes of William Friedkin talking about the harrowing process of making The Exorcist, and oh my god, is it good. Much like the De Palma documentary from 2015, the story being told is entirely from one perspective, which is fine with me, because Friedkin is just as hilariously blunt as ever.
I screened the rough cut of The Exorcist for Bernard Herrmann, and he said, well, I think I can save this piece of shit if you leave it with me, and I'll mail you a score. And by now, I'm a little upset.
He's not the sort of person to mince words, which for me makes his storytelling all the more captivating. The 70s was such a lawless time in filmmaking. I mean, my god. The stuff they got away with behind the scenes of this film is insane.
I smacked him in the face and I pushed him in front of the camera, and I said, action.
The director, Alexander O. Philippe, has added yet another great film documentary to his body of work, and I'll pretty much watch whatever he makes at this point. If you're a fan of The Exorcist or any of Friedkin's work, Leap of Faith is essential viewing for sure. Number 5, Feels Good Man, directed by Arthur Jones. Feels Good Man is a documentary about the meme evolution of the character Pepe the Frog and the artist who created him, Matt Fury. This is one of the most creatively presented documentaries I've seen in a long time. This film does a masterful job in terms of its storytelling, as it takes you through Pepe's entire journey from being a harmless character in a stoner comic to becoming a popular meme and then finally being morphed into this bizarre hate symbol. The animation in this really brings Pepe to life in such a way that you actually start to feel just as sorry for this fictional character as you do for his creator. The way in which internet culture is talked about doesn't feel out of touch in any way, and it's thorough enough in its explanations of the way meme culture works that you could totally show this to your parents and they won't feel lost. Feels Good Man is a wild ride, and as far as I'm concerned, the best documentary of 2020. Number 4, Possessor Uncut, directed by Brandon Cronenberg. You guys already know how much I love Possessor, so I'll be brief. It's great. It's wild and wacky. It's a beautiful character study of someone losing their humanity. And I know that in my initial review, I spend a lot of time whining about censorship. I just can't help myself sometimes. Complaining is just a hobby of mine. And when you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. Anyway, as much as I would prefer that people watch the uncut version of this, you can really watch either version and have a great experience. At the end of the day, I just want people to see it. Whatever version you can get your hands on, just watch it. It's neat. Number 3, Another Round, directed by Thomas Vinterberg. I cannot tell you how thrilled I was when I first saw the trailer for this. I love Thomas Vinterberg's work, and when I was finally able to see this film, I was not disappointed. Another Round is a Danish film about a group of friends who decide to engage in an experiment where they must all maintain a blood alcohol level of 0.05 at all times. It's a very interesting twist on the midlife crisis narrative. Every single performance in this is so good. Mads Mikkelsen is outstanding as usual, and if you've never seen him perform in his native language, I think this film is a really good place to start. These guys have to do a lot of different levels of drunk acting, which is a very easy thing to screw up, and not one of them came off as unconvincing. As you might expect, it does touch on the pros and cons of alcohol consumption, but it's in a way that feels very realistic and not preachy at all. I know it's a huge cliche to be like, this film will make you laugh and make you cry, but that's literally this movie. Listen, I love Hannibal, but Mads Mikkelsen is in lots of other things too. Watch them all. Number 2, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, directed by Celine Sciamma. I saw this movie on Valentine's Day 2020, and it was so good that it kind of made me nervous because I was like, oh my god, it's February. Did I already see the best movie of the year? And I mean, yeah, pretty much. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is now among my favorite romance films of all time. All the hype you've heard about this film is true. Best cinematography of the year. Period. It's an absolute masterclass in how to create a sense of romantic tension and longing. All too often in romance plots, the relationship will feel forced or underdeveloped to where you just don't believe that the two people in it are in love at all. The relationship between these two is handled with such care that you just believe every second of it. The chemistry between Noémie Merlant and Adèle Haenel is just off the charts. One of the most emotionally impactful final shots ever put to film of all time, forever. I mean, if you don't like this movie, you're so rude. It's perfect. And speaking of perfect, my number 1 film of the year is I'm Thinking of Ending Things, directed by Charlie Kaufman. What can I say? Charlie Kaufman has this weird condition where he's only able to make films that change my life forever. And on some level, I think I wish he'd stop it. I can't take it anymore. I haven't stopped thinking about this film since I first saw it. I've watched it several times since. I mean, it can't really be described. Not without completely spoiling it, anyway. You just have to see it for yourself. My guy just does it every time. And, speaking of really good boys, I have to be honest with you guys. It's a tie again. There's another number 1 on this list. It's only 17 minutes long, and I know some of you already know what I'm gonna say, but this is truly my other favorite film of the year. What Did Jack Do? Directed by David Lynch. What did Jack do, you ask? Stole my heart is what he did. He also might have killed somebody.
Who told you that? Sally? I'm a plastic bag specialist.
This short film is simply about a detective played by David Lynch interrogating a monkey who is also played by David Lynch. That is to say that it's David Lynch's voice pitched down and his mouth composited onto the face of a trained monkey.
Bullshit.
This film was released on Netflix on January 20th, 2020, David Lynch's 74th birthday. I mean, it certainly felt like it was my birthday because I was like, what is this gift doing here? I have been quoting this thing every day for an entire year and will continue to do so for the rest of my life.
Who's gonna believe an orangutan?
Maybe a jury, big boy.
I'd never been with a chicken before.
It's the funniest thing to come out in the last year, and if you don't think so, you know what?
You can burn in hell.
Anyway, that's my 2020 list. If you enjoyed this video, click on all this stuff, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!